During the Great Flood, it would have set off all the volcanoes, mainly superheated ash, volcanic eruptions. And there was probably that much of it that as the waters drained off, it was a thick soup which seemed to cover all these sites, which then, had a thick layer of mud rock over them because it would turn into mud rock, as well as, during those superheated ash eruptions, they petrified, turned everything into ash. If you see the site at Sodom and Gomorrah, what we understand as being Sodom and Gomorrah, but that site is different because it is completely covered, laced in, I think it's 90 odd percent pure sulfur, which does not occur naturally whatsoever. I think it's more purer than any sulfur than what we can actually make, okay? And it's found nowhere else on earth. So yes, I do believe that that is the site of Sodom and Gomorrah. And a few videos back, it wasn't welcomed at the time, but since that, researchers that are into this mud flood scene have seem to have accepted what I have mentioned there, and I am leaning that way more and more than information I have put out myself. Look, everything I've said about petrification is completely correct, and underground cities, everything with above ground, all that is correct, but I've thought that everything has been laid down from the Great Flood. All this mud and sand, uh, everything being buried has been put down by the Great Flood. And as time's moved on, it looks to me now like 80% of what we're looking at is actually ash, which is obviously mud, and it's got vegetation that's since grown on it. That is indeed what we are looking at, people, and that's why areas are completely level, right? This, and it will have been that thick in the ocean. As the water's drained off, it will have got thicker and thicker. It will have ended up like a soup, and then it just layered on top of all these sites, which will have already have been taken out by superheated ash and petrified in the same way, kind of, at Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's what this video is about. And that is where I am going to be moving, in the direction that I will move in. I will never mention the term mud flood again. Anyway, once you realise that this is all ash, you will never unsee it, and you can see it at the back of this guy here. The arrow that I have put in there, the red and orange arrow, is pointing to that hole. It's actually where pieces of wood will click into position. Yep, because it was in fact a built artifact which has now turned to ash. When I found this image, it said that archaeologists had found a tunnel under the site I'd just been showing you, and I thought, well, what kind of tunnel is it? Is it a tunnel that they've excavated in archaeology, trying to get under these places? But no, when I examined it, and you will have to do, you can see the imprints of what went into building this thing. There's just been that much compacted ash, superheated ash, that's gone down. It's burnt everything away, and you can see the imprints of what went into building this tunnel. This site here, it's Mayan again, and look, I'm not stupid. I know that they will have used clay in the same way that we use Artex or plaster. But if you look at the square boxing around it, that's the framework that this clay will have had to have been spread on in the first place, but there won't be any of it left. It's all been burnt away, I'm telling you. We're still in the Mayan area, and you can see that this site is on top of a huge hill of what looks like rocks, and because that's what it is, it's just clay, it's ash, that will have been put down in one go, and it's just cracked over time from frost, earthquakes, and it just creates rocks, and then you get growth over it, okay? And even though I said there's not much topsoil on many of these areas, 2 inches to 2 feet, it does depend on whereabouts they were in the first place. So, at the bottom of a huge hill, in a tight valley where, as the water's drained off, it will have acted like a log flume and dumped more soil, more ash, more more water down there. So it does depend, because this site here, you can see a wall that goes around what's above ground. This thing will be absolutely enormous. Anyway, some of these sites haven't yet been cleared of the ash mud that's layered on top, and I have wanted to get this off my chest for a long time, and I've always forgotten, and I've finally remembered it. Look, this is important, because archaeology tell you that there's a certain build up over a year, and they put it down to worms and other bullshit like that, right? But they never take into consideration if it's at the bottom of a hill, a mountain. There's the specific areas that will build up a lot faster, right? But it would never build up at the rate that they speak of. It's just that they have to lay that crap down for their narrative to work, okay? But when we're talking about the size of structures like what you're looking at here, for the build up there, right, to have eventually have growth on it, it would have to have been put down rapidly, whether it went underwater and it was silt and sand that managed to cling to the sides and then the water drained off, right? But in this case, again, it is indeed ash, clay, mud, right? And then you're able to get foliage that grows on it, because you cannot have soil build up on a sloped edge like that, specifically in areas where there's lots of rain, because it would simply rain back down the slopes before grass, weeds or anything managed to get a hold on these things. That is blinding truth, right? This stuff will put down rapidly, and again, it wasn't too long ago. It was this one that interested me the most, because as they are excavating this, you can see that it is nothing like it looks today. These smaller outbuildings, let's say pyramids, that do nothing, that you can just climb up and stand on, because when you look at these, they are digging straight through the center, because they were obviously some type of building. It was some type of city street. The rest of it is buried all around this. They call it, what is the street of the dead. And at the backs of these structures there is about a 10-foot slope, and then all the field behind that is where the rest of the city will be. Yes, we've already seen that these sites, these pyramids, were buried in up to, let's say, 2 foot of ash and silt. So in the fields behind there will have been a lot more than that laid down, so the rest of the city is up there and burnt and buried and crushed. But they are indeed digging out structures. They're not just platforms, these pyramid platforms to just stand on. So I've said this once before, so this is a guess, a suggestion, but these Chinese pyramids here, look, they are obviously lined up like a street. Yes, I think we're seeing the tops of buildings, so there's been a hell of a lot of ash and mud laid down, right? But the part that I'm guessing at is that I think these are, you know, Chinese buildings, they are shaped in a square. You've seen them, and I think that is literally what we're looking at. I know that it sounds crazy when you think about the size of them, but not really. You know, we've got buildings this big, and if you think about ash, or you know, ash being laid down and then a flood, it would fill every single nook and cranny of a structure like that up, and then go hard, right, and then layer it over the top, because when they dig down into these things, that's what it is, it's clay, ash, mud. And the main piece of evidence, just from looking at this image here, which is the same as the other ones, but this one's the best because it's been cleared of all the vegetation. If you look directly in the middle of the V sections, there is no reason for those. They look like huge beams, bars, yes, something that would strengthen a roof, especially that size, yes, and that will have happened from it almost collapsing. I know you can see what I'm looking at, and they shouldn't be there, they're not doorways, okay?